Are we ready, Ashley? Oh. So I'm sure we're live now. Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order and I'll look for my clerk for attendance.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the April 8th Committee of the Whole meeting. I'm Jennifer Connor, Clerk of Ramara Township. I'll begin with roll call of council. Mayor Clark.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Bell.
Present.
Councillor Snatch.
Present.
Councillor Fisher.
Present.
Councillor Tuyu.
Present.
And Councillor Bell.
Present.
Oh,
This meeting is being streamed live on the Township of Ramara YouTube channel. Be advised that by attending a public meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Township of Ramara, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded, and they will form part of the recording. The chair, CAO, and/or clerk have the discretion and authority to terminate or interrupt the live streaming in exceptional circumstances where the content of debate is considered inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate behavior and/or comments.
okay, thank you. The only thing I'd like to add for an in-camera is an update on a legal matter. So I'll add that one item in camera after the meeting. Legal matter I actually didn't know we had, so we'll get council updated on that one. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest for any member of council? Not seeing any deputations and presentations. We have none. Administration and finance, Councillor Snutch, you're from home, so I'll take that if you're okay with it, sir. All right, I have a recommendation here that we receive report TR0224 as information. This is our bulk water rates. Any questions or comments on the rates? Councillor Tuyu.
I just noticed that Brock Township was not included in the list of municipalities and the rates. Josh, do you know what the bulk water rates are in Brock, specifically for people who might end up going to Beaverton for water?
Yeah, so we looked on Brock's website. We didn't have time to reach out to Brock itself, but basically on their website, it states that their bulk water rate is the posted rate. We're assuming that's just their average water rate. So their water rate's $1.276 per cubic meter. But I know there is account fees within Brock, and it's kind of like a key holder system. So you have to apply, you have to be approved. I don't know if they're annual fees or monthly fees, but there's additional fees there in Brock for the bulk water.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I just have one comment, just to put it in perspective, people that aren't familiar with cubic meters. I mean, 1 cubic meter is about 264 gallons. So to get 1,000, 4.33, what do you, you're $20. I mean, it isn't an extremely high amount.
No, yeah, you're exactly correct. So.
All right. Any other comments? Can I move her in a seconder to receive the report? Move by the deputy mayor, second by Councillor Tuyu. All in favor? That is carried. Any unfinished or new business under administration? Not seeing any, so then I'll go on to culture and rec with the deputy mayor.
Great, thank you. We have 2 items, I think 2 items, maybe more. 3 items on the agenda today. So we'll start with 5.1 flag football program, RD 022024 PDF recommendation that we receive report RD 022024 as information, and that staff will implement a 6-week after school flag football program, Thursday night lights, in the fall 2024 for grades 7-8, and that staff apply for any applicable grants for equipment and supplies. Someone put that on the floor for me, please. Mayor Clark, seconded by Councillor Fisher. All right, questions? Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
I would assume this would be run at the Ramara Center, unlike the soccer fields is where we're looking. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Perfect. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to bring to attention, I did have a conversation with Justine earlier. So she said that should the township not be successful in attaining grants, it was minor costs associated because they already had included in their budget for new programming. So it would be the cost of a football and some flags.
Perfect. Good. Yeah. Councillor Tuyu.
Hi. I just remember from last year, I think there was an irregular time sort of scheduling around cutting the grass when it came to the actual tournament. So I was just hoping we could maybe set a timeline for grass cutting to just before the practice times.
For sure. Go ahead, Justine.
Yeah, so we spoke with Josh, and if we were to run the flag football program, we would just have the grass cutter stay on a little bit longer, just to make sure that we were maintaining the field better. Yeah.
Great. All right. Any other questions? All right, all in favor? Perfect. That is passed. 5.2, Baseball League. The report RD 012024 be received as information that staff meet with and survey the local schools on interest level for such a baseball program, and that if interest is sufficient, staff create a terms of reference for the implementation of a Ramara Youth Baseball League committee during 2024 to prepare for a 2025 league, obtain quotes for 2025 budget to upgrade Ramara Center ball diamond, and search for grants to purchase equipment and supplies. Somebody put that on the floor for me. Councillor Bell, second by Councillor Fisher. All right, open that up for questions or comments. Yep.
Yeah, it says we didn't have the enrollment in children. Usually I know when I was coaching, the trouble was finding coaches. It wasn't necessarily the other. So any different word, you know of lots of folks willing to coach? Or?
I do. I know
Okay,
my
good.
wife was one of the first people to volunteer. She said that she would, and I know that I was pretty active and still am in the Aurelia League. And I know that there's a lot of coaches that live or players that live here that would give their time for sure.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Fisher.
Just a question. Not that I'm against kids going out and playing baseball, but have you found, I guess suggesting that other municipalities, do they run their baseballs and soccer clubs and everything through the rec department, or are they done by the league themselves?
I found with baseball that most municipalities have their own leagues. It's just easier for them to run. They can follow all the rules and different things. And if we would just determine whether we would want a baseball league or a fastball league, we're just kind of trying to see what people want, and if that's a sport that people are wanting to participate in. I find with coaches, it's very easy to find them once you have the participants, because the parents will step up because they want their kids to participate. It's just making sure that we're facilitating the right sports that all the people want to participate in.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, it's not really a question, it's just an observation. When my kids were younger and there was still baseball active in the community, it was a fastball league, which was awesome. The kids loved it. But then when they aged out of the program and needed to go to Aurelia for beyond a youth league into an adult league, that turned into slow pitch, and they lost complete interest because it was a completely different game, and they didn't want to play with old fogies that's what my kids' language was, that they didn't want to play with old fogey baseball. So just something to be cognizant of, that perhaps if we could facilitate something like this, that would allow them to move on into, like, if we're going to do softball, to continue doing softball instead of going to fastball if there's no option for an adult league in the area.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I know that we've had a better program. I played fastball and hardball and slow pitch, and you do the transition, but you're right, it limits to who can. I think fastball, unfortunately, is a dying sport. And I think Ram even had a hard time running their league, and I think they're the only ones that actually have fastball in this area, because I think numbers dropped off. Everybody quit playing during COVID, and it never got reignited, but it is worth investigating to see where the interest lies for sure. Yeah. Yeah, Mayor Clark.
Again, might be worth reaching out to Dalton. Back when I was coaching, Rama was in our league, as well as Dalton had a team in the league. So that's how we were able to get enough to make it happen. We called ourselves the Ramara Cardin
Yeah.
ball teams. If we're running it, then I assume coaches would have to be police checked. Yes, we do that. Yes, of course.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. So all in favor? That's unanimous. All right. This is going well.
Excuse me, your worship, I think we should move item 5.3 into closed session.
I was just looking at that, and we're looking at recommending a name here. So yeah, that one we should tag it onto the closed session with the legal
Okay,
matter.
so move that down
Yes.
there.
I was wondering how you're going to read the rest of that motion.
Any unfinished or new business? All right, so I'll pass it back to the mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor to you with environmental services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's nothing on the agenda today under environmental services, but I'd just like to bring up a couple of items under new and unfinished business. At the last council meeting, we voted to receive Colin Cassen's really informative deputation on invasive Phragmites and oak wilt as information. I've always been aware of a couple of patches of Phragmites here and there, but yesterday I found 19 dense stands of it within the time frame of 45 minutes between Monk Road and Krogside Road. I have a 1-minute video snippet of a nature program to share, just in case it was not obvious to everyone how devastating of a problem Phragmites can become.
We're here in the Big Creek National Wildlife Area, and we're standing in a Phragmites stand. This is a European plant that is overtaking this area, and unfortunately, the density of these stands is so significant that wildlife cannot survive. Dead adult blending soda. We need to find a large-scale solution to get rid of this invasive plant. Without a large-scale solution, I do fear that our turtle species and many of our other wildlife species that use the Long Point Biosphere Reserve will be lost.
Ecologists believe the vast wetlands of Long Point in Ontario have about 5 years before they are completely taken over by the invasive plant Phragmites. To anyone walking through a 15-foot tall stand of frag, the problem seems almost unstoppable. But the people here at the Long Point Biosphere Reserve have faced a series of dire environmental challenges in the past and have somehow always come up with ambitious local solutions for how to solve them. The question this time is, can a solution be found in time to stop one of Canada's most important wetlands from being transformed into a dead zone?
Okay, thank you, Ashley. In subsequent talks with Colin, I was reminded that the Invasive Species Center has a granting program specifically for municipalities who want to fight invasive Phragmites, which will be available by the end of this month. Therefore, in order to be able to maximize our success in combating frag with the help of this funding, we really should be asking staff to follow up with Colin for the purposes of coming up with next steps for a report, what the costs might be, etc., as well as requesting staff to apply for that funding when it becomes available. Additionally, at the Roma conference, I spoke to Councillor Wendy Cherapita of Niagara-on-the-Lake, who told me that her municipality had great success with combating Phragmites and encouraged our respective drainage superintendents to get in touch to share notes. I know that Josh has had experience with this as well, so I'm very optimistic that this is something we can handle. So if the mayor could please chair for a moment, I would like to make that motion.
Okay,
And I can send this to you later, Madam Clerk, because it's kind of long. But for staff to contact Colin Cassen at the Invasive Species Center for the purposes of determining next steps and potential costs, and to ensure we apply for the grant funding to prevent the dangerous spread of invasive Phragmites, and for our Director of Infrastructure to connect with his counterpart in Niagara-on-the-Lake to collaborate on ideas for best practice frag removal, and for an online reporting tool to be created to report frag sightings locally, and for staff to create a report outlining the above.
okay, I have a mover, a second by Councillor Fisher. Zach, all doable? Like nothing here?
Yeah, we can definitely apply for it, and we'll have to come up with it. I probably would come back with a staff report just to see if we even have the resources to tackle something like this. I think our roads department is pretty tapped out, so that to add this will add costs as well for them doing this. But we can definitely look, and I'd come back to the staff report most likely.
So is that okay? So we'll definitely include the contact, the situation,
Yes,
but
it
give us a
because-
report back on cost for everything else.
Exactly, and that'll be part of the staff report is how our call with Colin went.
Yep. Is that fine with the mover and seconder?
Yes, it is. I was even thinking as far as coming up with a reporting tool. Nobody has to necessarily create an app, but it's maybe something we can add on our list of report of concern things.
Getting the
So-
nod. So Sherry, go ahead.
Thank you.
Councillor
Yeah,
Bell.
we do have the invasive or the noxious weeds already on there, so we could probably just add to that. But I was going to say
I'm sorry, Councillor Bell, I can't hear you.
Oh, we do have noxious weeds already on our report of concerns, so we could probably add to that. I was just saying that. But also, I noticed with the FRAG program, and I've already looked at it through Parks and Waterways because we're doing our rehabilitation down on our beaches. They typically are run by groups of volunteers. So I think when we're looking at the staff report, maybe just trying to figure out how we could tap into some of the other agencies in Ramara or Aurelia or Brock or Kawartha or whatever, because it seemed to be, you got quite a group of volunteers out together and then they went out and worked together on the program. So I think it would be good if your outreach, like the staff report just includes that outreach to the other
Right.
groups,
Well,
interested parties.
Go ahead.
yes, Colin was, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Colin had said that that they work in partnership with Ducks Unlimited and Nature Conservancy of Canada. So that's the kind of, if we can pool those resources, everybody wins.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. And I believe also Watersheds Canada has some grants going out right now too, but that wasn't actually my comment. My comment was going to also perhaps encourage staff when they're looking at options on how to combat that, not just to reach out to Niagara on the Lake. Niagara on the Lake. I know that the Y Marsh has really worked hard. A friend of mine used to work there. She's now a school teacher, but she used to work there, and she had identified frags years ago, even before I was ever on council. She's like, "You got frags here. You might want to get on it," because they had already started in the Y Marsh. So they have a lot of knowledge even before any grant funding was available on how to get ahead of things.
Okay, so good discussion on the motion. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Did you have another, Dana, or no?
No.
Right.
Does it is, well, I have another thing, but can I go back to chairing? Or is
I
it
will
still
hand it
you?
back over. Yes.
Okay, thanks. Okay, the other question I have, it's not a motion, but I just seem to recall that the residents of Lagoon City had requested a date for some kind of open house regarding wastewater. Have we got a date so that all residents can plan for this? And secondly, can you please confirm what we decided the scope of the meeting will be, i.e. wastewater in general, or the base shore sewage solution, or rate increases that have already been voted on, just so we can plan for it? Thank you.
Yes. So we haven't finalized the date yet. We're looking at early June. However, we're just working on a space and whether the space is available. So we're thinking with the first week of June. We're just trying to nail down a specific date and time. The scope of the meeting will be based on the report the treasurer brought regarding water and sewer rates. I feel like it'll be more of a question and answer period than anything. We did receive some questions from the public, so we will provide some information based on those questions, and then we'll also have information based on the report we brought at a previous committee of the whole meeting.
Thank you, Zach. Okay, that's all the questions I have are unfinished or new business. Does anybody else have any? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. That was on that topic because I was going to ask the same question.
Oh,
Residents are
sure.
asking me. That's okay. Thank you. And then I guess there's a couple of things I want to say, and I know people have started to submit questions to you, so I do anticipate that there's going to be a pretty healthy question and answer session that people are looking for. But on that topic, I also want to add, there seems to be a misconception that's traveling around the township right now, a confusion about what the request is. So I just want to categorically state that there has been no request for anybody's rates to be subsidized this year, next year, or over the duration of the 8-year rate study. The questions are around one very small segment of the population paying 76% of new infrastructure, as well as subsidizing the two very, very expensive water systems for, as far as I understand it, approximately 20 years. So what the community is looking for is solutions to those two particular items. Big picture, obviously, solutions to how are we going to manage drinking and wastewater in a way that we can attract investment and have local enhanced prosperity here in the township. So that's really important. The key is the misinformation that's circulating is hurting our communities and our township. So I want to be crystal clear on what that discussion was about. Thank you. Oh, sorry, and I do have an unfinished business.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a second. It looks like Councillor Snutch has a comment. Go ahead, Councillor Snutch.
Yeah, I found Councillor Bell's statement a little confusing because on one hand, you're saying you're not looking for subsidies. And on the other hand, you're saying you want somebody else to pay for it, which is a subsidy. I've got entire streets up here that are sort of panicking because of the stuff that's been posted out there on Facebook, that there are people out there that want people on Davy Drive to start paying $6,000 or $7,000 a year in water bills. So I disagree with your statement. What you're looking for is a subsidy from the general ratepayers to subsidize the water and sewer people. So I'll just correct that.
Thank you, Councillor Snutch. Yeah, I agree. There has been a lot of misinformation people are reading on social media, and it is scaring a lot of the residents to death. So I'm really looking forward to getting this all sorted out at that meeting so that people can get back to their normal lives and enjoying their safe drinking water. Does anybody have another item of, did you have another item of unfinished business?
I do. I'm not going to argue today. I'm going to be polite. I'm going to let that go. But yeah, somebody has been subsidizing somebody else's water for 20 years, and that's just not right. And we all paid for infrastructure, whether you have a well or whether you bought Lagoon City's water and wastewater and drinking water treatment facility, for example, or whether you bought I don't care how you did it, but we've all paid for infrastructure, and leaving one small segment of the population to subsidize everybody else's drinking water and as well now build somebody else's infrastructure, it's not going to work. Anyway, on the unfinished midsummer, I believe it was, I didn't pull the CW number up right now, but it's pretty quickly accessible. Councillor Tuyu, you had requested for a climate action committee. And at that time, the resolution was that we would create a terms of reference and start to look at how we might do that. And I'm just thinking the Phragmites would probably, not climate action exactly, but we didn't know what that committee would look like. So that might be something that would fall under that ballot act. So I'm just curious, are we still moving forward with that? Or I know it takes time to pull a new committee together and do the terms and all that kind of thing. So I just don't know where we're at with it, if it's proceeding for this year or just.
Yeah.
There hasn't been any action taken to date on that committee. Now that there is an interest and sort of a purpose, then we can start drafting that information, getting something together.
Okay. Sorry, I guess I thought that by having brought it up before that there was an interest in a purpose, but I thought that it just was taking a while for the staff report to be created. All right, well, that's great because, yeah, that is something that could fall under the auspices of the Climate Action Committee. So super. And yeah, and just to harken back to what the mayor had said in the February 26th meeting, we have one water system. I really, the talk of subsidizing and so on, I think just isn't appropriate regarding water. Again, this can maybe be a conversation for that meeting when everybody can be here to speak up. But yeah, so that's it for me. Anyone else have any unfinished or new business or comment on that?
All right, thank you. I will go on to planning services, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor. There's nothing on the agenda today under planning and development services. Is there any unfinished or new business? Well, that was easy. Back to you, Mayor.
I have protective services, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. I have been advised that John Popple's not here today, so I will put the items on the floor, and then oh, he did. Oh, okay, good. Excellent. Awesome. Okay, so I have quite a few items here today. So the first one is implementation of paid on-street parking for Paradise Boulevard in Lagoon City. And the recommendation is that we receive report CD 1124's information and that honk paid parking be implemented on Paradise Boulevard and Laguna Parkway in the designated zones for $5 per hour. Can somebody put that on the floor, please, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Fisher? Do you have anybody have any questions? I'm not sure, Dana.
The Trails Committee has met since this was first suggested, and they are not in support of having paid parking around the trailhead, as our trail system should be accessible to the public. Councillor Snutch and I visited the site to determine the best place to have free parking by the trail without impacting neighboring homes or the snowmobile trail or the busy entrance or exits to the marina. Please see the map that I've, Ashley, if you could show it with the purple shaded area indicating where the free parking should be. I know that John Popple had created his own map, but it was kind of difficult to see. So I don't know how much of that sort of coincides with his mapping, but that is what would be acceptable to the Trails Committee.
I can certainly provide comment, Councillor Bell, if I can have that opportunity.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So the request was for paid parking in these two zones. So I didn't look at free paid parking, but if that's something that the Trails Committee is requesting and Committee of the Whole and Council are agreeable to, we can do that. In terms of the zone, actually, if you could put that map back up, that would be appreciated. The recommendation would be basically in the report where the word free parking is there, where the 5th concession road allowance extends down to Laguna. The paid parking zone would extend from that area all the way basically to the boundary of the marina property on that side of the road. So on the trailhead side of the road, it would continue all the way down to where the boat storage commences, right there where the cursor is. Included within that paid parking zone would be the already approved 3 parking spots at the trailhead, which are free. So if council wishes to go a different direction and provide free parking in that zone, that's fine, keeping in mind that those people who live in the condos right there, or who have visitors, that is going to open up free parking for those individuals on the street, as opposed to requiring them to pay if they're visiting there or display a valid permit. And then the second location for the paid parking zone is directly across from the main, I'm going to call it commercial marine entrances, where guests and boaters access their boats, where the commercial businesses are on Paradise. So it would extend from Laguna all the way down to the bend in the road, further up Ashley on Paradise. So from that intersection there at a safe distance, on the opposite side of the road from the marina, it would extend down Paradise Boulevard to the bend in the road, to a safe location where we would end it for visibility purposes. So that was the recommendation of council, which is to implement free parking on Laguna. Then I'll leave that to council to decide.
Thank you, John. Councillor Snutch.
I have no comments about Paradise, but I just want to understand, John. So you're saying the paid parking that's going in on Laguna Parkway, there will still be 3 remaining free ones, or you're going to eliminate the 3 that are there now?
Through the chair to Councillor Snutch, no, the 3 free would remain. Those would not be removed. So there would be those 3 spots right at the trailhead. Everything on the left and the right of those spots would become paid. So that would allow non-residents to pay to access the trail system if they weren't lucky enough to get there for a free spot.
So those 3 spots would be the first to be gone every time.
Correct.
So yeah, so opening it up doesn't okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. So my comment is that is my community. And the reason that we have the residential or resident pass system in place is for the influx of trespassing and all the things that were occurring in the community. I'm trying to understand what the goal of the trail system is. So if you have a resident parking pass, then you can come and you can park there. If you don't have your resident parking pass in that designated area, then you should be paying for parking, just like I would do if I had to go visit any other community anywhere else in the province. So I'm not grasping what the issue is here, because we would be collecting money for parking for those who need to pay. And then anybody who lives in the township that wants to come down and use the trail would simply have their resident parking pass and use it. So I don't understand the 3 spaces, and I certainly don't understand any additional spaces. And I'm not hearing the justification, like it just doesn't make any sense. There's nobody being restricted from using the area, just like there isn't anywhere else. So I don't understand. The only thing we'd be doing by including all these extra layers is putting a heavier burden on bylaw to have something to go police. The simple thing that's working right now is resident pass or paid parking. Very simple. Doesn't really need to be anything else in between. So I don't understand what Trails is asking for. I really don't.
I'm just passing along what was told to me by our Trails Committee Chair and Deputy Chair. Sorry. And okay, and then the other question that I had that I wasn't even sure on that, thank you, Councillor Bell, you cleared up for me a little bit, is that it's the honk paid parking program has always been a little bit foggy for me in terms of is that an automatic paid spot for anybody parking there, or are people with parking passes exempt? So am I understanding correctly that people with parking passes are exempt from paying the honk parking spots? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Snutch.
Now, the Trails Committee basically wants to encourage as many people as possible to use the trails that come in from outside of the township. The other problem we have is that maybe down in Lagoon City, everybody's got a parking pass, but up here in Ward 1, no one's got parking passes because you don't need them up here. So the idea would be that if somebody wanted to use that trail, they'd have to go get a parking pass. And, you know, right now, that would be the only reason they would need one. But going back to the point, the Trails Committee is trying to be open and inviting to non-residents to use our trails, because the whole idea is the trails is that they interconnect with all the other townships. So that is the reasoning.
Thank you. But I still am not saying you have to pay for parking. That's just the way the world turns. Councillor Fisher.
The one thing that John had mentioned that kind of struck me is by having those 3 spaces there with all the condos there, I'm now concerned that it's just going to turn into an overflow for the visitors of these of the owners of the condos in Lagoon City that, oh yeah, we've got 3 spots out there that it's not even going to be open for people that want to come and use the trails because they're going to be taken up by guests of people that live there. Like, that was just an observation that John had just mentioned, that with the condos right there, it's now just created 3 free guest spots for the condos, and not all the other condos have that luxury.
Thank you. And that's exactly what I'm saying, right? We're just adding a layer of bylaw that we don't need. It's resident pass or paid parking, and then you don't have any gray areas. And it doesn't restrict anybody's use, right? If anywhere else you come, you're going to pay for parking. So, and I understand that if maybe Ward 1 doesn't just automatically get their pass, that's fine. But now they'll just have to, because that's what the rest of us have to do if we want to go park somewhere, Deputy Mayor.
I understand both points, and I do get what you're saying. I don't think it's an issue. The 3 spots have been there for free for a while. It hasn't been an overflow issue as far as I know. But we'll let John maybe speak on that. But I have no issue either way. I think that if the Trails Committee, they put a lot of work into this, if they feel those 3 spots are important to have, it's free, I'd support that. I do also hear what you're saying, Councillor Bell. I can go either way on that. Like, it's not a make it or break it. I think it's important to get something passed for this year for that extra amount of people coming to visit.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we can leave the motion as it is, but I'm just saying, to me, adding an extra layer to bylaw when we know that you can't even, on your best day, no matter how hard you try, you can't reach cost recovery on bylaw. So what we've seen is the parking is kind of mitigating that a little bit, and some of the other bylaws we've passed. So to me, it's just remove those 3, and then we keep it simple. They know what they have to police, and that's the end of it, right? That would be my recommendation, but I can't put that motion on the floor. I'd have to pass the chair back to the mayor to do that. But I think you wanted to speak, Mayor Clark.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think we need to complicate it. The 3 spots were there already. The only thing we've changed, correct me if I'm wrong, John, is this was resident parking only, and now we've added an option for people to actually pay for parking from outside the township. So that's all we've done. It's still restricted parking in that area. The difference is now outsiders can actually pay for time as opposed to just residents using that spot. So I don't see much of a change.
Anybody else? Good. So, yeah, I mean, I don't see the point in the 3, quite frankly, but I'm not going to sit and argue, but I just think it adds a task that we don't need, but I'm not going to argue about it. So the motion's on the floor. All in favor? So it's carried. So the next one is Bylaw Enforcement Services 2023 year-end Q1 2024 report. So the recommendation is that Committee of the Whole receive report CD 1224 as information. Can I have somebody put that on the floor, please? Councillor Fisher and Deputy Mayor Bell. And John, do you want to talk about any of it a little bit?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Bell. I guess primarily what I want to say is that, based on the statistics in front of you, we can see that it was a very, very busy year for bylaw enforcement. I'm going to say, on one hand, the call volume increased significantly, and I think secondarily, we also did a far better job of tracking those stats accurately to reflect how busy the enforcement officers are, both our full-time and our seasonal. But you can certainly see from the stats in 2022, we had 455 calls for service, and we almost doubled that in 2023 with 802 calls for service. So you can see our full-time and seasonal officers are certainly out there doing a lot of calls and responding to a lot of complaints. And a lot of these, like our canine control and property standards and short-term rentals, specifically zoning and quarries and fill complaints, those are not go to the call and clear it within 30 minutes and then move on to the next one. These are files that takes weeks and months in some cases to get either compliance or to move forward with prosecutions or court actions. So it certainly shows that the department has been busy, and I think it's only a trend that's going to continue in 2024 based on the numbers we're already seeing for the first quarter. So just kudos to Mike Downing, Eric Susel, and Amanda Mason for their hard work out in the field for the past year, and then our seasonal officers that we've had in place as well.
Thank you very much, John. These reports are great because there's such a good snapshot that helps us understand exactly what's going on. So I appreciate it. And I also want to say, I appreciate your approach to long grass this year. And I'm really happy that you already have the contractor. So yay. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. It's, I guess this is a question, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask or not. It's a general bylaw, and I think it falls under where this report sits because it's our update. I sometimes get residents call and say, well, I've put this into bylaw and I haven't heard anything yet and it's still happening. Can you just give, I know it's different with every situation, but just a little quick snapshot of what it looks like from, I put a report of concern into by the time it takes staff to look into it, and then if it does have to go further, like why things, when bylaw shows up, why sometimes it doesn't just like a flick of a switch change.
Right, through Councillor Bell to Councillor Fisher. So we certainly endeavor on any report of concerns, voicemails left, emails sent, to provide at least a call or a return of that information to the complainant within 2 business days. We do our best to meet those targets. Once we've had that contact, we are hopefully going out to the property or location, depending on what it is. Sometimes it's a 3 or 4 days, depending on the officer's workload. If it's something that needs immediate attention, then it's 1 to 2 days. They're going out and responding to that complaint. If it's something significant, like a property standards complaint, for example, where we have derelict motor vehicles and junk and debris on a property, there's specific timelines that we have to follow. So we need to give those individuals at least 19 days to comply. But that is all dependent on what the size of the debris is or the amount of work required to rectify that. So it might be something where we're providing them with 2 months or 3 months to do the work, and it all depends on time of year. So if it's the middle of a winter, it's a little bit more difficult to do some of those tasks. So it's really up to the officer to find a working terms with that property owner, and that goes for a number of our different files. Zoning as an example, there's multiple layers. We may get a zoning complaint, and that person may apply for a minor variance, so we have to hold off on enforcement while we're waiting for that minor variance process to play out, whether it's approved or not. So there's always factors. We try to communicate those factors back to the residents as much as possible, so they're aware this is why we're not moving forward at the moment. But if they're not compliant, charges are laid, we'll try to relay that information. If they need to be a witness, we'll contact them obviously at that point. So there's lots of mitigating factors that might show that there's nothing happening from visual standpoint, but certainly behind the scenes, there's a lot happening to rectify those complaints.
Thank you. Yes, no, I was quite aware, and I try to articulate that when I have the calls, but I know that you can do a much better job.
Thank you, John. Does anybody else have any comments or questions on this one? Okay, so all in favor? Good, so can't talk, that's done. Let me get to I moved ahead here. I shouldn't have done that to myself. Okay, so the next one is distribution of resident parking passes to tenants not listed on the assessment roll. And the recommendation is that Committee of the Whole receive report CD 1324's information, and that Committee of the Whole select a desired option for the management of 2024 parking passes for tenants who don't appear on the assessment roll, and that Committee of the Whole select option, whichever we select. John, would you like to speak to this as well?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bell. I guess I'll start with basically going into the option that I'm recommending, and that is option one. After listening to the discussion at the last meeting where this was brought up, and looking back at the parking pass program in the past, we really haven't had these individuals reaching out in large numbers looking for these passes. We've had one campground, one lease land development where the developer still pays the taxes. There's only one rule number, so those individuals couldn't apply. And then we had the yacht club in Lagoon City. So we've worked well with those groups. And I think if any of the additional groups come forward, and certainly if they're listening to this meeting now and say, hey, I think I'm one of those, I would encourage them just to reach out to me. I can work with that group. We can determine whether if they qualify based on the ownership status of those types of properties that they own, and then I can administer the program from there. Alternatively, option two would require me to contact all those groups, find out who they are, if they're even interested in getting a pass. But I think since the passes have been implemented since 2021, those groups should have come out of the woodwork by now. They should have approached us and asked for those passes. And I think now that there's a little bit more public information, they may, and I think I can manage that just from a staff administration level. So I'm really recommending option one, Councillor Bell, is the preferred from a staff level.
Thank you. I didn't actually put it on the floor, so can I ask two people to do that? So Mayor and Councillor Fisher. Sorry, I shouldn't have moved that agenda ahead like that. Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah,
Clark.
I was just going to move option one as part of the movement.
Yes, perfect. Yeah. So does anybody have any comments or questions on it, or are we good with option one? Councillor Fisher?
Yeah, no, I am good with option one. And my purpose of bringing it up for discussion was to have discussion, right? So that if there is interest in the other groups, not necessarily to add more workload to our bylaw department to reach out to the other groups. But now if they're listening, paying attention, or the people that live there or participate there are listening, and then they can kind of push for that.
Thank you. No, that's great. It's always good when we have the reports too, because then it's a quick thing for you to reference and hand off to somebody. So all in favor? Good. So that one's carried. The next one is, sorry, there's a long agenda because all the tender stuff. So when you scroll away. Okay, so it is the review of Township of Ramara kiteboarding bylaw 2020.053, and the recommendation is that we receive CD 1024 as information. Can someone put that on the floor, please, Mayor and Deputy Mayor? Would you like to speak to it, John?
I can briefly. I think the report, and I attached all the old reports that were written over the last 2 or 3 years, and the bylaws that were the original bylaw that was passed, and then the amending bylaw. Really what the cause here was during the pandemic, we saw obviously an increased use of our public beaches, because once the province opened up a tiny bit, those were one of the activities that were permitted, was, you know, some small outdoor gatherings. So we saw our beaches increase, and then we saw our traditional use of those areas by kite surfers mixing with those individuals. And the sharing of space just wasn't working at that point because of those increased usages by both groups. We also had some commercial kiteboarding operations in Lagoon City that were operating, which were, not in compliance with zoning regulations, accessing our public parks for teaching and operation of their kiteboarding schools, which kind of compounded the problems. So the initial bylaw was passed to kind of prohibit kiteboarding within the summer months from municipal property. After review, an amendment was made to the bylaw to kind of extend the time period prior to May 24 till after the Labor Day long weekend at all of our areas, and then to permanently prohibit kiteboarding and kite surfing from the Steps Beach in Lagoon City and the dead end of the road allowance on Simcoe Road in Lagoon City, because those areas were just too small. We had kiteboarders and equipment trespassing onto private property to extend it out, to go out into the water and then to put their gear back and dry and those types of things. So we had trespassing activities that a lot of local residents weren't agreeable to. So that's kind of the genesis of why the bylaws were passed. During that time frame, we did form some committees and groups where we worked with the kiteboarding community to try and come up with some solutions in terms of specifically Lagoon City Park and Beach, where we could share the land between the beach park users and the kiteboarders, designating some areas, putting up signage, and working together. And there was a good collaboration there. It wasn't supported going forward to do that just because of the congestion, the playground equipment. And now that there's been approval and the implementation of new playground equipment in some of these areas, it created too much entanglement between the two groups. So that wasn't supported, and that's where we lie today. We receive very few kiteboarding complaints because there's been compliance with the regulations. So I certainly appreciate that from the kiteboarding community, that they have not gone to these areas when they're not permitted or where they're not permitted. And there hasn't been any major issues over the last couple of years.
Thank you, John. Any questions from council? Mayor Clark?
No, I'll support the motion that we just received. I was part of those committees at the start, and one of the issues we have, and again, most councils are aware of this, the little public beach in Lagoon City just isn't large enough to accommodate. I don't even think it's 90 feet. So and with the new playground equipment there now, we just could not accommodate swimmers at the same time as kiters. So I'll support that we just received.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to clarify first, the reason I brought this up at the last meeting, there was some controversy started on Facebook posts. This wasn't to stir up trouble or create havoc or anything else for Lagoon City. This was simply the democratic process we've been nominated and elected to do. Somebody requested this, and after a pandemic, global pandemic, it's our duty to go through all these bylaws that are created because of that congestion and review it. And I wasn't one way or another. I would support this motion as it stands now, understanding it better. I just wanted to get a clear idea and new people that have moved to the area. But I just wanted to clarify that right off the start. There's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet. Thanks.
Thank you. You're right, Mayor. The width, that sort of skinny part, we'll call it, is actually 78 feet. So 78, and the kites themselves can be 45 to 59 feet. So, you can imagine they just don't fit there. As far as any discussion on the topic, I think respectfully, Deputy Mayor, the issue is that bringing motions to change the way that people can enjoy their communities without having the benefit of speaking to me first, for example. A lot of this probably could have been avoided with a phone call. The community it's a residential area, and they actually do pay a pretty hefty levy to take care of their private beaches and waterways. And when you start to have this massive influx of people, the people who actually live in the community can't drive their car down and access the beach because there's no parking. So those are that was an aside issue, but the safety aspect of it, to try to have an unsafe feeling in your community is not what people desire. So at any rate, I just wanted to clarify that. So the motion's on the floor. All in favor? And that's carried. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Tu.
Sorry, I had a bunch of sort of comments just further to what the deputy mayor was saying. This is a public beach, and Lagoon City, I know they've got their special levies and private beaches, but according to that PR 11, 2% of that land was supposed to be dedicated towards a public area. And so that's it there. So I don't see how, you know, I understand that, you know, neighbors are protective and so on of where they live, but it's a public beach that all taxpayers pay for. It's access to the water that everybody should have access to. You know, regarding all of the concerns about trash or bathrooms or public nakedness or whatever it was, I don't see why kite surfers would be the only ones creating a problem with that. And again, just harkening back to what the deputy mayor was saying, COVID, those social distancing measures are no longer in effect. Kiteboarding itself has recently become an Olympic sport, and this area is an ideal spot for kids to learn with stable westerly winds and a sandy bottom for a long way out. I realize that there are, you know, other areas on the lake that, you know, for more professional people, but that's very deep water and it's difficult to learn. If you look at snowboarding and how it was received initially on the ski slopes with skiers being afraid that it would, you know, ruin everything and create a safety problem, it clearly has not. I just feel that we're sort of treading into the whole kind of, you know, are we that town from Footloose where, you know, we're trying to prevent active recreation, which is, you know, what I thought we're trying to support now, getting our kids off their screens and doing something active and enjoying all the water we have to offer.
Thank you, Councillor Tu. So again, the kites would take up this space. So no, there is no room on that small beach for kites. And I appreciate that you'd like to make decisions about what happens in my community. But for example, I didn't recommend street racing in your community or, you know, gun ranges or doing powerboat racing on Lake St. John, for example, right? So my community has a fear. There is a safety issue. That area of beach, whether you're talking water, which clearly we can't police, but certainly on land we can. And this program has been in place for a few years now, is working beautifully. There are a number of areas where kite surfing can happen. For example, 5 minutes down the road in Beaverton, you have Thora Beach, which there aren't boaters anchored. There aren't kayakers and swimmers out in that water. There aren't people picnicking on that area. We just spent $100,000 in combined grant money and taxpayer dollars to have a play area where people can access the beach and water. And we do have the resident parking permit pass and system in place, meaning people who couldn't come down to the beach from Brecken, Gamebridge, wherever that's kind of close locally, or even somewhere else in the township, now have access to a playground and beach area. And again, the people who are in proximity, you've read all the emails that came from them, and you might minimize nakedness on the street, but the people who live there and watch it don't appreciate it. They don't appreciate the congestion. Yeah, there's just no room for it there. It's not an appropriate place for it. Somebody else had their hand up. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, but I do agree still that we're not an authoritarian. Just because we disagree with something, we still have an obligation to bring this forward. And I'd agree with Councillor Tu on that. And, you know, you keep referring to Lagoon City as your community. That's part of Ramara Township. We're all taxpayers. That is a public beach area. And I get that if you're neighbors to that park, you may have another opinion of that, and I have to respect that. And that's what we did today. We voted in respect for those people and everything that was brought forward. So I don't really have anything else to say.
Councillor Fisher? Thank you. So we've already carried the motion, so we'll move on.
No, we haven't. I had my hand up the whole time.
We did actually, but go ahead.
So I have a couple questions. One, I got a letter from somebody, but basically they're from Lagoon City, and they said they were using the kite surfing, the private beaches for that. Do they allow that? Does Lagoon City Parks and Waterway allow kite surfing?
Yes, they do. They do. Those private beaches are funded by the people of Lagoon City, the levy payers, and the levy payers can go launch off the beach if they choose to. So the only thing that this would do would bring in, there's just actually no reason for it. If you have a house on the lakeshore, you can use the lake. If you are a levy payer, you can use the private beach. So this does not serve the people of Lagoon City in any way. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, that's,
Sorry, I was asking a question, yes or no, and I got my answer, so they are allowed. So the people that take off on the South Beach kiteboarding, are they allowed to do that on the private beach?
They can, they typically don't. They typically go to the North Beach where there's less boaters and less congestion and less swimmers and all that sort of thing. And there's definitely a difference between the 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 residents or whatever it is who are avid kiteboarders and regularly out there, and an influx of Lagoon City as a kiteboarding destination. It's again, a residential area. It's not a destination, Mayor.
So I have 2 questions, I said. So the second question is, who owns the property between the South private beach and the South public beach?
I'm not sure.
there is no property. I can answer that. The
I
the
don't know what
private
you're referring
beach
to.
abuts the public beach. So
I'm
it
sorry,
all,
yeah, I'm not sure what property you're referring to.
The 5 or 6 houses that are in between the private beach and the public beach have a fence that go back about halfway to the water. From their fence to the water, is that Lagoon City Parks and Waterway Beach? Is
Yes.
that township property? Who owns it?
It's Parks and Waterways.
Right over to the fence of the public park.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor,
and,
did you
and
have-
that was my comment though, was on your first question, that again, there is room to accommodate the kite surfers at the private beach because it's much larger, and that was part of our discussion. So yes, it's not that the area is anti-kite surfing, it's just our public beach isn't large enough.
That's right.
And that was the issue.
Okay, so we've put that on the floor. Councillor to you.
Sorry, when I put up my hand earlier, it was not to vote to carry the motion. It was because I still had questions. So I hope this is still open for discussion. But I just was, you touched on the grant that we received recently for the funding, with the intention of the Ontario Trillium Fund not to be to promote recreation.
It would certainly be to promote the playground that's there, and the playground can no longer be used if there's kite surfing or kiteboarding happening. One kite takes up the space again. There's nowhere for kiteboarding on that beach. It's very, very tiny. The numbers tell you 78 feet across, a kite can be that. Sorry, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. Okay, I wasn't going to comment on it before, but I will now because I guess it's still being discussed. As far as the grant goes in the playground and whether or not there's kite surfing going on, you had mentioned that it's now recognized as an Olympic sport. So shooting, I'm not going to go down because it's an Olympic sport and just shoot willy-nilly because it's an Olympic sport on a public park.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. And again, there are areas in the province where kiteboarding is acceptable and it works out well. And those areas just happen to be such that there's one right next door in Beaverton. So the people who are sending in support that want to drive up from the city, they don't even have to come that far. They can go right to Beaverton where there's lots of space for them. But in addition, there's Allenwood Beach, Wasaga Beach, Keswick, Cherry Beach, Coburg, St. Catharines, Long Beach, Long Point, Oliphant, and Snow kiting or whatever on Lake Wilcox. So there's certainly options. The community at Lagoon City, just like your communities, prefers not to have all that kind of trespass. And for those of us who live there, well, there was an influx of kiteboarding. It became a really difficult place to live. And nobody wants to go back to that when we have a bylaw that's working perfectly well. Councillor to you.
Just touching on what Councillor Fisher had said regarding shooting, I just think it's kind of interesting. I think it's actually easier or more legal to carry a gun in this township than to carry a kiteboard. I understand it's $1,000 fine. So, and then I guess just as far as the safety aspect, I'd so much from an environmentalist standpoint, I mean, wouldn't you rather see, you know, kite surfing or windsurfing, that kind of thing, rather than sea-doos and boating and stuff in and around swimmers? That's the angle I'm thinking of too. And I just find it very difficult to understand why we wouldn't allow it.
Thank you. So I think we've already answered that. So I'm going to put the motion on the floor. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And the last one is the Township of Ramara draft sign bylaw. And the recommendation is that Committee of the Whole receive report CDO 924 as information, and that staff forward the draft sign bylaw as presented to Committee of the Whole to Council for approval. Can I have somebody put that on the floor, please? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Fisher, John, I'm going to go straight to you, please, just so you can make your comment. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Bell. So I'll touch on the high points, I guess, in terms of what this bylaw would be regulating, but it would certainly be regulating the placement of signs within the township as a whole, not within one specific area. So it provides the distinction of between signs, advertising signs, temporary event signs, and real estate signs slash open house signs. Obviously provides an exemption for federal, provincial, and municipal regulatory signs, and would not regulate election signs. We would continue to utilize our election sign bylaw for that. Sets out clear prohibitions for the placement of advertising signs on municipal property, whether that be a park, a road allowance, road, boulevard, shoulder of the road. All those areas would be regulated with this bylaw. It sets out regulations and permit process for temporary event signs. So any community groups, Terry Fox Run, any groups having a garden tour, studio tour, anything like that would have a formal process and regulations to follow for the placement of those signs on municipal roadways and property. And then it sets out specific regulations for the placement of real estate and open house signs on municipal property and private property. And then a couple of schedules to the bylaw would be the application form would be developed for the temporary event signs, which would also be online if we were to move forward with this. And then Schedule B would set out the schedule for fees for any signs that we would be removing from our road allowances or property that are in contravention of the bylaw, which include the removal fee, the storage fee, and a disposal fee. So that's really the highlights of this bylaw as to how it regulates signs within the township.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work you put into it. It brings us in line with other municipalities across Simcoe County and the province, which is great. And it's very timely because this is the time of year when it starts to ramp up. So we're getting it in just in time, which I appreciate. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. The only thing that kind of jumps out at me with this, and it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, is the restriction of 25 temporary signs for any event, which sounds like a lot of signs. If, for instance, if there was an event happening in Lagoon City, you might not need more than 25 signs to hit all of Ward 5 to bring everyone into Lagoon City. But if we're having something in the community, like I know yesteryears is planning, which sounds 25 signs still sound like a lot of signs, but that leaves only 5 signs per ward. And then when you think of all the major areas to access, like through Highway 12 and Highway, like County Road 169, Monk Road, 46, 47, all those signs are going to be used up there. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can massage it a little bit to, depending on the type of event or the scope of event, if it can maybe be changed a little bit, because 5 signs doesn't, I don't know. I don't think that sounds like a lot. Like when I look at the size of Ward 2, for example, that would be 1 sign on 169, 1 sign on Monk Road, 1 on 46 at this end, 1 on 46 on that end, and then Highway 12. And if you happen to take all back roads home, you're not seeing any of them. You're not hitting along like the Ramara Road. You're not hitting other areas. So it does sound like a lot of signs in some regards. Like, holy cow, if I had an event for Edney community, 25 signs is a lot of signs. But for something larger, like for yesteryears, I would hope that they'd be able to push out a lot of advertisement, because that's bringing a lot of people to the community and really highlighting what Ramara is and how she became, right?
Thank you, John. Yeah, thank you.
So my first comment would be, we don't have to set it at 25 signs if we have larger events that you think will require additional signage beyond that. I'm happy to move that number up or down, or change it somehow where it's at the discretion of staff based on the size and location of the event. My second comment would be, when the application comes in, I would not be approving signs on Highway 12 or on 169 or any county roads. So those 25 signs could not be located on those other jurisdictions' roads. So signage on Highway 12 is not permitted at all by the MTO. And then I'd have to look into what the county's regulations would be, but they would have to tell me where the 25 are going. And if they said 5 of them were on Highway 12, I would not approve that application.
Thank you. So I like the idea of just maybe not saying 25, but yeah, because yesteryear's is fair size event that we'd be doing now, or that the Historical Society would do next year. So maybe, yeah, that language that you just said, John, just the, at the discretion of staff, that would probably be a great change on that little piece of it. Councillor Snutch.
Thank you. In the north end of Ramara, we don't need a sign bylaw. The signs that we have out there that I noticed on the weekend were for the Ramona Fish and Chips. There was one for Lucy's 9th birthday party. There's somebody else that's got a sign down here, which is talking about the eclipse. It's a big billboard. I just don't think we need a sign bylaw. What started all this was a situation in Lagoon City with too many real estate signs. And for some reason, it expanded to, we have to put more rules and regulations in place. There's no need to have this sign bylaw applicable in Ward 1. I'll ask the other councillors if they want them in their wards, but we don't need it up here. And I think people are getting a little fed up with the way we're trying to regulate absolutely everything. We live in the country, and we don't need to. And if Joe wants to sell his honey, put a sign outside, I don't have a problem with that. So I won't be voting for this. Unless I would support one for Lagoon City, if that's what Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Councillor Snutch. So for just a couple of points I'm going to make, everybody in the province has a sign bylaw. This is not new. This is not shocking. This is not surprising. This is how communities govern themselves. And we have all these areas that are poised for development. So putting it in place now is the right thing to do. And of course, the rest of Simcoe County already has. So that's my first comment. Secondly, this was not about real estate agents, and it was not, so that comment is not correct. I just want to be clear. The number of signs that were out some were real estate, yes, but there were all kinds of other signs as well. So no, this was not about real estate agents or targeting real estate agents. This is about bringing Ramara Township in line with, again, every other township in the province. And also allowing people to have enjoyment of their community, which they weren't doing. So if this is something that needs to be added by schedule, then that's fine, so be it. That's not for me to write those schedules, though. That would be up to John. So John, if you'd like to comment on that piece of it, because I know at one point we had talked about that. My fear with that, again, of course, is we're talking about implementing something that the rest of Simcoe County and the province has. This is not a surprise. It's very normal and expected. John, go ahead.
Yeah, if the desire is to simply implement this bylaw in a specific ward, then we can certainly just add Schedule C, which is a map of that particular ward, and add a section to the bylaw that says this bylaw applies only to Schedule C. That can be done. That's not complicated.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Listen, I wasn't opposed to looking at a draft bylaw, but no, I won't support it either. The only calls I've ever gotten and the only emails I've ever gotten on signs in the 24 years I've been on council were people objecting to a sign bylaw. That is the only emails I've ever gotten. So again, it might be a Lagoon City problem, but I'm just not seeing it. And if we did pass it, even for Lagoon City only, I would still exempt real estate signs. I drive all over the county, and that's where you see the real estate signs, out on the boulevards, because there's so many properties that you just can't advertise if you don't get that sign out where you can see it. Putting it back on the properties, it's just not visible, and it's all about trying to get people the best value for their homes. And that's why they use real estate signs. They're trying to improve the value of the home they're selling. So anything we can do to help the real estate agents, it benefits everybody with the higher price of sales in your area. So I can't support this bylaw as it's written, but I didn't object to it coming here and having a look at it, but I don't see a need for it yet myself either.
So thank you. So just so you know, some of the people that are requesting this bylaw are real estate agents, because the problem is when you have 87 signs out and you have numerous real estate signs all over the city, the appearance to a buyer is that there's a reason not to want to buy. And in fact, there's a reason to want to get the heck out. So there's real estate agents who are asking for this for the reason that they want to have the signs managed in Lagoon City the way they are in the rest of Ontario. And there's a standard that most real estate agents would meet. So on the real estate piece, that's that side of it. The balance of the signs, if you guys don't want to support it, that's fine. I will leave it so that residents can call you and let you know when they want all those signs removed. Or I suppose what they'll end up doing is what they did in the past and yank them themselves or paint them with mustaches and that sort of thing, which I don't think is what we want. I think what we like to do is put bylaws in place in keeping with what the province does. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I've actually received a number of phone calls about this draft bylaw coming in and the consideration that council's taking with it. And I've had a number of people in Ward 2 in all areas, not just the more developed areas. I've had Val Harbor, Joyland Beach call about their signs, as well as people along 46, because there's a lot of signs along there. So even in the rural areas. So if we were doing it by schedule, then I've heard loud and clear from the residents in Ward 2 that they would also want to include Ward 2. And I've actually spoken because I have friends in other wards too, and I have heard people in Ward 1 and I have heard people in Ward 3 and in Ward 4, because of course that includes Brecken, right? So that I've heard support of this bylaw from all wards. So I guess if you want to do it by schedule, then I would put a motion in that we have schedule all wards.
Thank you. And I also have had questions from other wards, particularly Ward 4. And so I would agree with you that this isn't going to just be in one ward. But it sounds like we're not going to have agreement on that. Councillor, to you.
I was just going to say I would second Councillor Fisher's motion to have the separate schedules per ward, because I haven't heard anything from Ward 3.
So then I can't put a motion on the floor, but Jen, Deputy Mayor, did you have a comment before
I just wanted to make a comment that as it stands now, I can't support this. I mean, everybody I spoke to, as far as real estate goes, were opposed to this right from the beginning. And they showed up loud and clear at the meeting that we initially had. And I've talked to several since. So I haven't had a single real estate agent reach out to me and say, yes, we need a sign bylaw. So on that stand, I can't support it or for the entire township.
Councillor Fisher, would you like to put a motion
I would
on the
like
floor?
to amend the motion that we receive the report and that staff take this draft sign bylaw back for amendment to include by schedule. Does that make sense? You can make it sound pretty, because I didn't.
Okay, so I'm going to put that motion that Jen has put that motion on the floor. So sorry, John.
I just want clarification as to what am I adding all the wards and then council is going to determine at a council meeting which ones are included or not included? Or am I simply adding those that we're hearing today that are looking for a sign bylaw?
Well, can we not just vote to putting my ward and yours for now, Councillor Fisher, if that's what, and so those two wards, and then add them by schedule that way. And then when other wards come up, and I'm sure they will, you can add those by schedule at a later date. Do you want to amend the motion, Jen?
Well, I was just going to say, I don't see a seconder for the motion yet, so I'll hold my thoughts until we get a second.
Thank you. So Jen, do you want to restate your motion?
Jen, can you please restate my motion?
Sure, that we receive report CD 09 as information, and that staff prepare a signed bylaw to be presented to council regarding sign regulations in Ward 5 and 3. 2.
Thank you. So the motion's on the floor. Is there a seconder? Okay, no, that's fine. Sorry. So Jen has been defeated. So then do I go back to the regular? Easy for me to say. So the motion that was put on the floor in the first place, all in favor? Actually, yeah, all in favor? So
If I can just help, Madam Chair, is that the committee of the whole received report CD 0924 as information that staff forward the draft signed bylaw presented to the committee of the whole to council for approval. So it's implementing the bylaw. That is the original motion.
Yeah.
So yes, it's already on the floor. So all in favor? Okay, so that's defeated. I have unfinished or new business, but I'll wait. Does anybody else have unfinished or new business? No? Okay, thank you. I have to remember what I was going to say. Okay, so this is not to put a motion on the floor. It's a request, please, for some information to go out via communications. I've already been receiving numerous feedback on ATVs. So I'm hoping that we can put the communication back out again for spring, which Ashley was probably going to do anyway, but just to preempt it, and just remind people that golf carts are not permitted on municipal roadways under the Highway Traffic Act. Has nothing to do with me, Lagoon City, Brecken, Ward 5, anybody else. They're just not allowed, period. That, and again, as well with the ATVs, which we already right now are experiencing insane speeding. ATVs, again, you have to be licensed, you have to have a seatbelt, you have to do all those things. And so if those pieces of communication could go out just preemptively, that would be very helpful, I think. And then as far as the new business, we had talked about the long grass bylaw. We talked about clearance in roadways just in general. And we did get a staff report on that piece of it. In discussion, though, we never did finish talking about meadows or naturalized properties. So I do have a few folks out on Lakeshore, for example, who they want to have a naturalized property. So this would be, you would still, again, have to cut the road allowance because you don't want to take away visibility or whatever. But those naturalized properties, we didn't really get back to that. So I can't put the motion on the floor again, but I'm hoping that somebody can put a motion on the floor that we follow the lead of some of the other townships where we have a permission within that long grass bylaw that if you don't want turf and you do want to have meadowland, it lays out the kinds of native plants that you can grow on the property. And they're being passed, I think, in a lot of townships right now. So I know it's kind of on the newish, but I wonder if it's something that we could look at. So staff report on that. Councillor Fisher's.
Yeah,
Sorry, you would move that, Mayor?
I'd move to get a report on that.
Yeah, perfect.
future
Yeah, I
committee
was
of
just
the
going
whole.
to just
And
get a
second
personal
that? Okay, so I'll, sorry, Councillor Snutch, did you want to comment first or?
Yeah, I'll just comment. I know it makes it very difficult for the Works Department because they're going along with their cutters. And I've had a couple situations up here where somebody's beautified that portion of the municipal property and it's been cut down. And it makes it very, it's frustrating for the resident, but just to say, I don't know, you have to get Works Department to figure out, they're going to have a list of every single street that doesn't want their property groomed. They're gonna have to raise the blade and put it back down.
Sorry, but road allowances, you shouldn't be growing long, tall things in anyway. So that's like the road allowance is a different aspect of this. Road allowance, we're already getting a staff report on. This was specifically if a person wants to have a meadow or a natural lawn versus a turf lawn. And I do have some people on Lakeshore that have had that question.
On their own property, you mean?
Yeah, like their turf instead of, yeah, exactly. Okay, so motion's on the floor and all in favor? Okay, so that's carried for that staff report. And so nobody else had unfinished, yeah? Okay, so I'll pass it back to you, Mayor. So, sorry, yes, I did, Mayor and Jen and Councillor Fisher. It was the mayor moved, Councillor Fisher second. Thank you, Jen. Okay, so back to you, Mayor.
Why don't we take a quick break and come back, washroom break, come back 11 o'clock? Everybody fine with that? Yeah, well, and then we'll finish because we got a lot of tenders here, but I don't expect a lot of discussion. It should go fast. Oh, okay, our clock's slow, so sorry, Jen, we can talk after. Oh, we're waiting for clerks. Our online clock's showing a different time than the one on the wall, so I do need some clerks before I can come back. Oh, you're a deputy clerk, are you not, Amber? Yes. So, yeah, I'll give Jen a minute. Okay, so I'll call us. Yeah, the clock on the wall isn't correct with the computer time, so I'll call us back and I'll just get my clerks to confirm that I still have a quorum.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can confirm that you do have quorum.
Thank you, and then I'll go on to Transportation Services, Deputy Mayor.
All right, we have quite a few things on the agenda today. They should be quick. They're just tender results, so we'll get started. 9.1, recommendation that report ID 1224 be received and that council contract with Parkland Fuel Corporation, OA, Sparling's Propane for a 3-year term to supply the township with propane and storage tanks at the estimated bid price of $141,261.98 per year, and that the successful bidder be advised. Somebody put that on the floor for me. Hey, Councillor Fisher, second by Councillor Tuyu. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. Second item, infrastructure tender. Recommendation that report ID 1124 be received and the council contract with Bowman Fuels for a 3-year term to supply the township with gasoline, diesel, colored diesel, and heating oil at the estimated price bid of $257,772.21 per year, and that the successful bidder be advised. So to put that on the floor, Councillor Fisher, Councillor Snutch, all in favor? Passed. 9.3, recommendation report that report ID 1824 be received and that we award the contract for Robert E. Young Construction Limited for the supply and application of gravel to various roads in the township at the bid price of $355,760 plus taxes, and that the successful bidder be advised. Somebody put that on the floor. Mayor Clark, Councillor Tuyu, any questions? The only question I have is what kind of gravel are we putting down, Josh? Is this going to be granite or limestone?
No, it's a gravel, not granite. It's not limestone. It's a gravel base. It comes out of the Selwyn quarry of Robert Young, so on 46 Kawartha Lakes.
Okay.
Not limestone, not granite. It's kind of mixed in between. So.
Okay, good. Any other questions? All in favor? That is carried. 9.4. The recommendation that report ID 2124 be received in the council contract with Roto Mill for the pulverization of various road in the township to be completed in conjunction with surface treatment at the bid price of $9,388.80 plus taxes, and the successful bidder be so advised. Somebody put that on the floor. Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Fisher. Any questions? All in favor? It's carried. 9.5, recommendation that ID 1924 be received and that we award the contract to Duncor Enterprises, Inc. for the completion of slurry sealing on various roads in the township at the bid price of $103,306.95 plus taxes, and that the successful bidder be advised. So I put that on the floor. Councillor Fisher, Councillor Tuyu. Any questions? All in favor? That is carried. Okay, 9.6, that report ID 1724 be received and that the infrastructure department contract with Black and McDonald Limited for the maintenance and repair of township street lights for the next 3 years. Somebody put that on the floor. Councillor Bell, Mayor Clark. Any questions or comments? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Tuyu.
Thank you. Through the chair to Josh. I have a question. When we replace a street light, are we switching to the downward directed kind that do not violate dark sky best practices or shine into people's windows? If not, can we please start planning for any new outdoor lighting to conform to the Canadian guidelines for outdoor lighting in keeping with the dark sky protection programs? And I've just got an image up there Ashley's sharing to demonstrate the best practice downward directed lights.
Yep, so the answer is yes. We have been switching everything over to downward facing. When everything was switched over to the LED lighting, it was all downward facing. I think currently the only lights left that are kind of all around are the kind of marker lights in Bayshore Village. So as they get replaced, they'll be changed over to the downward facing at that point.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Fisher.
Does this include, because I know it was one added afterwards, so just for clarification, because I know it's a little bit of a contentious light, does this include the one over at Bayshore and Bayshore? For the maintenance?
Yeah, that was a solar street light.
Yeah.
So we were trying the solar street light. I am getting pricing to go to a conventional street light. We're just trying to determine costing right now for that one.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All in favor? That is carried. 9 point, where am I now? 9.7. Recommendation that report ID 2024 be received and the council that we contract Duncor Enterprises, Inc. for the completion of double layer surface treatment on various roads in the township at the bid price of $72,489 plus taxes, and that the successful bidder be so advised. Somebody put that on the floor. Councillor Fisher, Councillor Tuyu, questions or comments? All in favor? That is carried. 9.8. Recommendation that report ID 1524 be received and that the infrastructure department contract with 1000632 Ontario Limited OA Summit Property Group Simcoe Muskoka for the grass cutting of 3 township operated cemeteries. So we put that on the floor. Councillor Tuyu, seconded by Councillor Fisher. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Fisher.
How many cemeteries do we have that we need to maintain?
I think it says 3 here.
Yeah, just the 3.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? That is carried. All right. It's all good. Oh, did you? Oh, 9.9. Recommendation that report ID 1624 be received and the council contract with Marquee Snow and Ice for the hot mix patching as where required for the period of 2 years. I'm gonna put that on the floor for me. Mayor Clark, seconded by Councillor Fisher. Okay, questions? Go
I
ahead.
believe this is the one where we're not going with the lowest tender. You've had issues before with this company. So how does that, I know our tenders are very specific that we don't necessarily accept the lowest tender, but how does that play out?
So as long as we're able to come up with reasoning why we're not accepting the lowest tender, we're able to select any other tender. So this contractor that was lowest, we've used in the past. I believe it was about 5-6 years ago. They did the patchwork on 46. They've done some patchwork on Fairgrounds, which has been repaved, but their work wasn't to the quality that we required. And to try and bring them back in to do repair work, they essentially were going to charge us again to do the work over. So
do we inform folks just not to tender? I don't know what kind of cost it is to companies when they tender.
So typically there isn't really a cost to it. To download the material through Bidingo, there is a $15 fee, but you can get it off our website for free. We do require deposit checks. So there's the deposit check or I can't think of it right now, statutory document to do a secured bid.
Yeah.
So there isn't much, especially with small contracts like this, there's not a whole lot of, there's time that goes into it, but not a whole lot of money.
Yeah, it's not like they're pricing redoing a road like 47,
no.
because if we were to have somebody tender to redo a road, you know, in fairness, we should say,
Yeah.
don't even bother tendering in
Yeah,
advance.
so I have been working with the county. They did put out a preferred vendors list.
Yeah.
I've been working with the county to jump in on that. That way with the bigger contracts, there's a preferred vendor list that you can pull from. And anybody that's not on that list, there's some discretion on whether or not you want to just accept their tender. But there's reasons typically why they're not on that preferred list. So I'm just trying to work with the county to get that one. It does go right into the smaller projects like this. But they're still working through that one currently. So
Okay. Thank you.
I think the problem you get into, I've been involved with this before, is that if you start telling people they not to bid, you can get into legal action. That's the problem. But you can do technical requirements, or you can do invite only or suggested vendor list. They have to be accepted on. Okay. I will say that on fairgrounds, they created 3 speed bumps last time, and it was pretty bad. It was terrible. All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. All in favor? That is carried. 9.10. The recommendation that ID 2124 be received and that the infrastructure department contract with capital parking lot painting for the painting of lines and handicap spots at various parking lots in the township. Someone put that on the floor. Mayor Clark, seconded by Councillor Tuyu. Any questions? All in favor? That is carried. We'll pass it. Oh, any unfinished or new business? Go ahead.
I have 3 quick ones, if I may. Plum Point, we did a repaving there. There's still some driveways that haven't been fixed up. Is there a contractor coming back? Paved driveways where I guess our crew went through and now they're asphalt's off of.
So everything was supposed to have been done. There was a couple concerns from residents, which we've sent our crews in to use spray patcher to.
Okay. All right.
If you want to forward me the address,
I will forward the address to the one, and that one's quickly. Can we get an update on the request from Bot? I think it was looking to purchase a road allowance in their area. I think we need a staff report. We were kind of waiting for to do a way to reroute the road around their quarry. If we were going to give them land, that we'd take some back, but we'll need some kind of staff report, I think, which includes detailed maps of that area. Any idea when that will come back?
Yeah, they did request, I think, to purchase, and we brought a staff report regarding that. I don't know if there was a motion to bring back a staff report, but that's something we can do.
No, I was going to bring a motion to bring back.
Okay, yeah, and we can bring back a staff report. So looking at the purchase,
right,
and
I think it was was it D&E they wanted it?
D&E, yeah.
15, 16.
15, 16, D&E. There was 3 roads.
There was a bunch of them, but
altogether,
we'd need to sit down and really look at the map and what road allowance don't we need? Where would might want a future road when it all becomes one big lake? That's kind of my concern, right?
Sorry, David, my mic was off. We had a seconder for the motion that the mayor put forward for a land swap with Bot or a purchase of property with giving us another option of a road around the pit. So that's what's on the floor right now.
For a staff report.
For a staff report. All in favor? That is carried.
And lastly, I did have a request for ATVs to use 47. I know it's a county road. Can we get a quick staff report on whether it would be feasible? And then we'd have to make a formal request to county, because county does allow ATVs on some roads. I don't think it's allowed on 47 east of Brecken. And it's the folks on Silva and Glen, when they want to bring their 4-wheelers into town, they got to go all the way down to the first and then all the way back up our 47 and back up, where it'd be easier if they could just access 47. So I think they wanted to come down as far as Harrigan or even down to the 4th.
Okay. The only concern might be because of the haul route,
That's
the truck
why,
traffic.
yeah.
But if they're Sylvan Glen, could they not come concession 5?
It down 5 and across is what I'm thinking, is what you're
And
thinking.
across,
Well, that's why I just
yeah.
get a report on what you
Yeah,
think
yeah,
the best
yeah.
suggestion, and we can present it to the
Okay.
folks. And if it looks like it makes sense, it has to be a formal request to us when county updates their maps where they allow ATVs and where they don't. Maybe part of that, could we see which roads they are allowed on in Ramara? Because I get that request all the time when the hunters are coming through, whether it's allowed on part of the Monk, but not the other. We just need to know where 4-wheelers are allowed on county roads.
On county, yeah. I can see what county has. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Fisher, any other comments or questions on that? Okay, let's pass this one, then we'll get to that. All right, all in favor? That is carried. All right, Councillor, is that all the mayor? Okay, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. They're both questions, and one's actually outside of our jurisdiction a little bit, but maybe we can put a little bit of pressure. The first question is just a general question, because we just passed all these tender awards. They fall within your budget, right? Like, we're not going outside of that? Okay. I mean, we still need it done either way, don't we? The second question is, and this is gonna put a little bit of pressure on you, Mayor, as also our warden. I know that the county came in and worked on Monk Road on the other side of the lights at Monk and 169, and they did just a little bit past where he's passed away now, Joe Callahan's place was. But once you're off of that stretch, it's all blah, 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 all over again. So I was just wondering if you can either provide an update or ask for an update from county to give to our residents here, when the county's going to continue to finish the work on the Monk Road.
I will try and get an answer back tomorrow when I'm down there, because yeah, that's been an ongoing project fixing that up. Yes.
I have many loose fillings.
That's all. All right, any other unfinished or new business? All right, passing it back to the mayor.
Okay, thank you. And I guess we do need to go in camera for a couple quick updates. So I would look for a motion to go in camera at 11:15. Moved by Councillor Fisher, second by Councillor Tuyu. All in favor? That is carried. We'll have to use our mics so that Looks like we're out. So Jen, if you can confirm I have a quorum still.
I can confirm you have quorum, your worship.
I don't see Dave. I don't know if we lost him when we came out or. Oh, we'll leave him in camera. Hey, yeah, yeah, we'll leave him there.
He's there, your worship. I can see his name on the screen.
Okay, it's just a matter of getting him.
He's just
Okay.
muted and his camera's off.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I will carry on because I have a quorum and we're just receiving the information anyway. So the first is a motion that we got an update on a potential legal matter moved by Councillor Fisher, second by Councillor Tuyu. All in favor? That is carried. And the next one's on the senior year nomination and that staff proceed as directed, moved by Councillor Fisher, second by the deputy mayor. All in favor? That is carried. And I speaking of our sign bylaw, I saw some election signs up on our way into Bracken this morning. So just wish good luck to all the candidates that signed up to fill our Ward 4 position. So with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Fisher. Boy, the hand went up quick there. Second by Councillor Tuyu. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.